It's amazing to me that the number one determining factor of how well people do in life is communication. If you desire for your life to elevate, you better improve your ability to communicate. It doesn't seem fair, but it doesn't matter if it's fair. It's how life works. In fact, it's how life works because this is how God set it up in Genesis chapter 1. He gave us so many success principles in Genesis chapter 1, it's almost like he gave us a wink and said, well, if you don't get to chapter 2, you're going to be all right. We're going to go back and look at a principle you've heard me teach on before in Genesis chapter 1. But before we do that, I want to read a verse to you in Proverbs chapter 13 and verse number 2. I want you to let it marinate into your cerebral cortex. I think that's somewhere in your brain. And here's what it says. A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth, but the soul of the transgressors shall eat violence. A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth. What does that even mean? Well, I believe what it means is this. See, we already know that every deed is a seed. We know that. How many of y'all know that? Wave at me if you know that. Okay, we already know every deed is a seed. We already know every dollar is a seed. How many of y'all got that already, right? But here's what we forget sometimes. Every word is a seed that we are sowing into the garden of our future. And one of the things that we would all do well to do is to become hyper intentional about the word seeds that we sow into the garden of our future. I know I'm having conversations with somebody, with people sometimes, and I know they think I'm being obtuse. And I'm not intentionally being obtuse, difficult. Why didn't you just say difficult? I don't know, because obtuse just sounds so much more poetic. But I know they think I'm being obtuse, but I'm not. I just don't have the ability to agree with something I disagree with. I can't do it. Like, I can't say, like, if you make a statement that I can't go with, I have to, and you're waiting for a response, I have to first acknowledge that I don't agree with that statement before I can even go any further. I don't know how to do it any other way. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Said, yeah, I was really concerned about X, Y, and Z. I said, I wasn't really concerned about it. Well, I'm just saying I was concerned about it. Right, but I'm just saying I wasn't. And I wasn't trying, I had no desire to be difficult whatsoever, but I hear what you're saying, but I can't agree with you. Because I wasn't concerned about it. Why? That's not the kind of thing I generally get concerned about. I generally don't get really concerned about a whole lot of anything. I don't have a whole lot of angst. I don't got a whole lot of stored up anxiety. It just ain't there. Yeah, I was really worried about it. I really wasn't. Been so long since I worried, I don't remember how to do it. I don't remember. I have very weak worry muscles. It just ain't something I practice. And so every word that comes out of your mouth matters. And what we've got to do is we've got to act like they matter. And so what I'm going to show you today, I'm talking about people who make millions of dollars, and I know everybody's desire is not to make millions of dollars, but a couple of y'all probably be okay with that. Anybody in here be okay with that? Okay. So if you desire to elevate your income, you must elevate your communication. Become a better, I don't like talking. I don't care. Life don't care. Don't like it and still get better at it. I was so introverted growing up. And believe it or not, I still feel like an introvert even though I operate like an extrovert. Why? Because I found out that, the squeaky wheel. Y'all heard about the squeaky wheel, right? I said, man, this wheel better start making some noise. Them quiet wheels, they get ignored. And I do get, if I'm teaching, if I'm in a teaching environment where I'm sharing things that I really care about with people, I get energy from that. If I'm just hanging out with people and it's just like a networking event or it's like a party or a birthday party, I That is not my sauce. I am not the life of a party. I'm not. In fact, when we have family get-togethers, my wife always makes fun of me. I know where he's at. He's somewhere reading something, watching a YouTube video, somewhere off by myself. Because I love my people, but like I am not an extrovert. That's not my jam. I'm not a natural extrovert. When I'm not in my environment and I'm around a whole bunch of people, I just assume just not have a whole lot of attention. Now when I'm teaching, it's different because I just believe that the truth can change people's lives on levels that nothing else can. And so I can get excited about sharing some truth with somebody now, right? And I don't even care if other people hear it, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to share with you some things that I've learned about how to be a better communicator. Because when you communicate better, you will elevate faster. And so I'm going to talk to you about some of those principles. So the foundation of this entire conversation is something that I discovered in Genesis that I call the 4 levels of value. Has anybody here never heard of me talk about the 4 levels of value? And it's okay if you haven't. Okay, good. I was hoping there were at least a few. I know there are some people on YouTube who've never heard me talk about the 4 levels of value. So before I even share with you the 4 levels of value, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the erroneous belief that people have about how to get better income, okay? One of the erroneous beliefs people have is that if I want to make more money, I have to work harder. Now, I'm not saying working harder is a bad idea. Like, we should work hard because working hard makes us better and stronger people. Working hard for money is not really a very effective plan. It's highly inefficient. I like to tell people think that working harder makes them more deserving of success. I have found that that's not necessarily true, but it definitely makes them more tired. So if you'd like to get more out of the equation than being tired, then maybe your plan needs to include more than just working harder. Y'all tracking? And so people say, okay, well, I want to deliver more value. Okay, that sounds good. You deliver more value, you make more money. That's incrementally true, but exponentially false. What does that mean? Well, if I deliver more of the same value that I'm already delivering, it can only add to my income. It cannot multiply it. Are y'all tracking? But if I desire to multiply my income, like maybe I'd like to turn my annual income into my monthly income. Okay, maybe I'd like to turn my monthly income into my weekly income or my weekly into my daily. I don't know, whatever your objective is. It doesn't matter. What I have to do if I'm going to do that is I have to offer a higher level of value, not more value at the same level. Now, here's why that's true. Because wealth is a spiritual outcome. Wealth is spiritual. And since wealth is spiritual, if I'm going to attract or create or produce wealth, then I have to operate on a level of value that delivers a higher level of spiritual value, not necessarily a higher level of material value. And one of the reasons we buy into this lie is because people think that wealth is, in its essence, in its nature, materialistic. But it's not. In fact, I'll prove it to you. I think I will. So hopefully I have $1. I used to have $1. I do have $1. Okay. So I've got $1. That's $1. Is it upside down? It's upside down. That's $1. I had George Washington standing on his head. That's $1. That's $1. Okay. This is $100. Anybody have a penny I can borrow? I'll give it back. I promise. Just a penny. I like that idea. Probably not. So I want to show you something that's going to blow your mind. I think it blows my mind when I think about it. So $100 is worth more. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Siobhan. Okay, so y'all see me? Y'all see me? Okay, I have in this hand a penny. Say, why are you doing your hands like that? That's what magicians do when they get money. They start doing stuff like this. I don't even know what it means, right? Okay, so I have in this hand a penny. I have in this hand a $100 bill. I'm gonna ask y'all a question. If you're watching on YouTube, you can answer in the chat, okay? This is not a trick question. This is not a trick question. This is not a trick question. Which one's worth more, the penny or the $100 bill? Is everybody gonna answer? Everybody has to answer. Okay, which one's worth more, the penny or the $100 bill? Okay, thank you. Now, every time I ask that, even though I say 3 times it is not a trick question, somebody will always say the penny. So let's address that first. No, it's not a judgment play. It's not a judgment play. I'm showing you something about how stuff that's going on inside of us that we're not even aware of. We got to inventory of junk all up in here. We don't even know is in here. Here's why, even though I said clearly, this is not a trick question, this is not a trick question, this is not a trick question, somebody will always say the penny. So let me ask you the question a different way. If I were going to give you a $100 bill or somebody else's penny, which would you rather have? Then that's the one that's worth the most. Okay, now, why do people say the penny? It doesn't matter how big the crowd is, it doesn't matter how small the crowd is, somebody always says the penny. Why? Somebody always says the penny for 2 reasons. Number one, we've been programmed in a miseducational, misdirectional system, AKA the government indoctrination camps, child prisons, schools, whatever you want to call them, to believe that if an answer is too obvious, it must be the opposite. So we don't even realize that the so-called educational system has programmed us to ignore the simple truth and find a complicated lie. And we can't even help it. We spend too much time there. Secondly, we say the penny because we think, well, the material that the penny is made out of, hang in there with me, am I telling the truth? This copper is worth more than this paper, right? How many of y'all were doing those mental jumping jacks even if you said the $100 bill? Exactly, right? The copper's worth more. He's asking this for a reason. He must be asking this because the copper is worth more than the paper. Even though I said money is not materialistic. But watch this. We believe it is materialistic because that's the lie we've been told. And so when we look at it and somebody asks a question that's obviously the $100 bill, we're going to say the penny because now we have to start figuring out and rationalizing why the penny is worth more. What's worth more because the material the penny's made out of is worth more than the material the $100 bill's made out of. Or if you could take 100 pennies, that's way more. That material is worth way more than this material, but this is still worth more. This is worth 10,000 times as much as this, even though both of them are basically worthless. There's no gold backing this. This is fiat currency. What does fiat mean? They made it up. That's what it means. It means there's nothing backing it. Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1973, I think, maybe 71. I don't know. But he took us off. There's nothing backing it. Okay, so if there's nothing backing it, how can a $100 bill be worth anything? How can a penny be worth anything? Well, 2 reasons. Number one, this is worth more than this because of the message it carries. This says 1 cent, which means 1% of $1. This one says $100, which means 100 times $1. Now, say, what does that mean? That tells us that's one of the clues that money is spiritual. How's that a clue that money is spiritual? Here's how. Language is something that only belongs to spiritual beings. Only spiritual beings can understand language. Birds can't read. Dogs can't write. Elephants can't count. So we have language, and the language denotes it's spiritual because it's language. And then the other reason a $100 bill is worth $100 is because we believe it is. The only thing backing this currency is faith. Now let me ask you a question about faith. Is faith a physical attribute or spiritual? Is it material or physical or spiritual? Spiritual. So the essence of money, the essence of wealth is spiritual in its nature. Now, the spiritual substance in the Bible that has represented wealth throughout all eternity is gold. We know that. And I used to wonder when I was a kid. Now, you probably never wondered this, but I have a very curious mind. And inquisitive mind, inquiring minds want to know. Well, mine wants to know about everything. And I remember the first time I saw shiny copper and the first time I ever saw shiny brass, and it's the same exact color as gold. And I'm like, well, why is gold worth more than brass and copper? Did anybody else ever wonder that? Is it just me? You wondered it too, right? Thank you. So at least two of us. The rest of y'all, I don't know what y'all think about, but that's what me and Ryan was thinking about. And the first reason gold is worth more, let's talk about that. Y'all ready? Because God said so. That's why. In the book of Genesis, gold is mentioned exactly 8 times. 8 is the number of abundance, infinity, eternity, and the new beginning. And gold represents all of that. What do you mean? Well, see, here's the difference between copper and brass and gold. Copper and brass corrode and gold does not. So it's a type of eternity. Are y'all tracking? Every time gold is mentioned in the book of Genesis, for all you Christ followers, churchgoers, who believe that God wants you broke as a joke and ready to choke, every time gold is mentioned in the book of Genesis, without exception, go study it for yourself. It's only in there 8 times. It ain't going to take you that long. It's always mentioned in conjunction with God's people. What does that tell me? Seems like God put abundance on the earth for his people. In fact, the first time it's mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 and 12, and it says there's gold in that land, and the gold of that land is good. Wait a minute. Did I say the Garden of Eden? I didn't say the Garden of Eden. I said the Garden of Eden, didn't I? The Garden of Eden, yeah, it's in the Garden of Eden. Wait a minute. How many people were in the Garden of Eden? How many? 2. There's 2 people in the Garden of Eden. Did they have any relationship with each other? What was the relationship? They were husband and wife, that's right. How many stores were in the Garden of Eden? None. How much does stuff cost? Nothing. So in an environment where there are 2 people and they're married to each other, there are no stores, there's nothing for sale and nothing to buy, God put gold and precious stones in the Garden of Eden and made sure he told us it was there and made sure he told us it was good. It is. So why is he doing all that if he wants us to be broke as a joke and ready to choke? Because God wants us to understand that opulence and abundance are natural resources in the environment of the children of the king. Otherwise, I'm misrepresenting him. I ain't fixing to do that. I don't need nice cars. I don't need, y'all don't even understand. I know how to shoot a bow and arrow. Straight, hit my target. I know how to fish. I know how to shoot a gun. I know how to grow a garden. Conveniences are nice, but they ain't necessary. But yet and still, God said, even though you can do all that, guess what? I'm going to put you in an environment where Now, here's what's interesting. See, people, because we read the Bible so fast, we're interested in getting through it, we don't read it slow enough to let it get through to us. The first time it's mentioned as providence for God's people. Providence, provide in advance. God put the gold there before he put the people there. Guess what? God put your prosperity in your environment before he put you there. But you still got to dress and keep your garden. Oh yeah. Yeah, you got some gardening to do, baby. Huh? You got some weeds in the garden up in here. Okay. The second time gold is mentioned in Genesis chapter 13, verse number 2. It says, and Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. This is a trick question. Was Abram rich? No. He was very rich. He was very rich. How? I love the fact that God didn't just tell us he was rich. It told us how rich he was. Very. But it didn't just tell us how rich he was. It told us how he was rich. Because God knows how people like to spiritualize things to let themselves off the hook. Well, when it says he was rich, it just meant, he had a godly and noble heritage. Well, that's good. But that ain't what it says. It says he was very rich in cattle, in silver, and gold. Here's what it says in the book of Proverbs. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is of the Lord. House and riches. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers. So, okay, let me ask you a question. How many of you know you'd be a lot further ahead in life if your parents, when you got married, had given you a house and some riches? You'd be a lot further ahead, right? Okay, so let's practice. Let's be the first in our family to practice something that I learned from Dr. Sonia Scribbling. Y'all ready? Here it is. You may not come from a wealthy family, but let a wealthy family come from you. Yes, sir. Be the first one in your family to give your children house and riches. Yes, well, see, in America, we think it's noble. Well, you're 18, get out of my house, go figure it out. You couldn't figure it out when you was 18. That's crazy. Hey, Isaac was 40, still living with daddy. You know when he moved out? When he got married. That's God's design. I don't know if I could handle my 40-year-old. That's between you and them. I'm just telling you what the Bible said. See, here's the problem. We don't prepare our children to become responsible adults. And so we want to get this child who's in a grown body, who's in an adult body, away from us because they run our blood pressure through the roof because we didn't teach them how to become a responsible adult. Okay. I'm going to give you one more little aside before I get back into the 4 levels of value, because this is going to be so good. So, the Bible is a book that has promises, principles, patterns, precepts, prayers, prophecies, and practices that give us the ability to make predictions about outcomes in the future. So we can position ourselves where that outcome is going to happen on the path of prosperity. And when I say prosperity, the word prosper just means to flow. That's all it means, to flow. That's why I don't hustle and grind. I'm too busy ebbing and flowing. I don't got no hustle in me. I ain't got no grind. I got a lot of ebb and flow. Why? Because that's what the scripture says. It says when the Spirit is in you, it's gonna bubble up like a spring of living water. That's flowing. That's not hustling and grinding. The grass don't hustle. The trees don't grind. Okay. Y'all with me? I can tell. I'm picking up what y'all putting down. The first time, we think rich equals evil. But the first time the word rich is used in the entire Bible is Genesis chapter 13, verse number 2. The very first time it's mentioned. And it's talking about Abraham. And it says, and Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. Let me ask you a question. Was Abram a good guy or a bad guy? He was a good guy. He's a friend of God. But he's the first person the Bible tells us was rich. Herod, Pharaoh, they weren't the first people God told. God said Abram was he wasn't just rich, he was very rich. Okay, now, how do we do for our families? How do we yield to the word in such a way that we can create wealth for our families like God designed? 4 levels of value. What are they? I'm going to show you what they are. And then after I show you what they are, I am going to show you where it's at in the Bible. And then we're going to look at how it ties in with the very first success principle in the Bible. And I'm going to show you some things that you can do to elevate your communication so you can elevate your compensation. Y'all ready? Everybody say, I'm ready. Okay, here we go. So the 4 levels of value are, 4 levels of value are, get a pen. Okay. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So the lowest level of value is implementation. Now, you have to remember that wealth is spiritual. Why? Because once you understand that wealth is spiritual, you'll understand why this works the way it works. You mean wealth is spiritual? Okay, so the resources that you use on the implementation level to make money is you use your muscles over time. Right? You hammer something, you saw something, you lift something, you carry something, you fix something, you clean something. I stayed at the Marriott TPA last night because my wife had an early flight, and so it was easier for her to get up and just walk across the bridge than having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then do traffic and then all that, right? So when we checked into our room, this is amazing. Y'all ready? It was clean. Isn't that amazing? Novel concept. Here's what I know about rooms. They do not clean themselves. Sometimes it seems like they mess themselves. That's a different conversation for a different day. But they don't clean themselves. The hardest working people in any hotel are the housekeeping staff. The people who make the least amount of money in any hotel is the housekeeping staff. Why? Because they're working on the lowest level of value. It's not that what they're doing is not valuable. It is valuable. It's that the marketplace doesn't value manual labor times time like it values higher levels of value. In fact, if you're down here on the implementation level, you're making somewhere between minimum wage and on the low end, on the high end, you might be making $80,000 a year. And this is your floor, this is your ceiling. And if you want to make more money, what you got to do is you have to elevate. Where am I elevate to? The next level is called unification. On this level, the resource we use our management skills to make money. We manage other people. Down here, we're the person who does the thing. Up here, we're the person who manages the people who do the thing. Are y'all tracking? And on this level, on the low end, if I'm managing that Taco Bell that this person right here is working at, I might make $40,000 a year. On the high end, if I'm a manager at a Fortune 100 company, or let's say I'm a middle manager at Lockheed Martin, I'm going to make $250,000 a year. But here's the thing about making $250,000 a year as a middle manager in a Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 company. When a business is paying you $250,000 a year, they want you to know, even when they're paying you less, they want you to know they own you. I ain't paying you to go to your daughter's recital. That's your problem, not mine. Right? And okay, y'all tracking. Okay, use your management skills. Now, managing people requires a higher level of spiritual acumen than doing the thing yourself. See, muscles are a physical resource. Time is a limited resource. People wonder why they can't get rich. You can't get rich because you're multiplying a physical limited resource times a limited resource called time. The only thing you can produce is a limited outcome. Is what I'm saying making sense? Wealth does not start to be created until you get above this line. This is the level of value called communication. And the resource you use here, you use your mind and your mouth. To create conversations that generate cash flow, to create messages that move the masses, to create messages that make money. Communication is where wealth begins to be created. On the low end, on the communication deal, 100,000 a year, easy. High end, it could be 100 million a year. 100,000 a year. You get a job selling cars, selling insurance. You could make 100,000 a year to 300, 400, 500,000 a year or more, right? Depending on who you're selling it to. You sell in real estate. But man, what if you're a songwriter and you write songs for A-list singers? You could be making $100 million a year. What if you're Taylor Swift and you write your songs and produce them and own them? Communication level. What if you're an actor like Denzel Washington? I know I remind you of Denzel Washington. That's not the point. What if you're an actor like Denzel Washington? Well, guess what? You could be making $100 million a year pretending to be somebody else. That's amazing to me. I know what I'm gonna do for a living. I'm gonna pretend to be other people and let them pay me, right? This is where the wealth begins to be created. But guess what? Most of us aren't gonna be Taylor Swift or Beyonce. We're not gonna be Denzel Washington. We're not gonna be Jamie Foxx. We're not gonna be Brad Pitt. We're not gonna be Angelina Jolie. So we're gonna have to do something other than acting and singing, and so we gotta figure something out. Well, guess what? Entry-level communication is selling. Writing books. You could become an author. The barrier of entry is low, and the potential payoff is insanical. You say, what's insanical? That's when maniacal and insane have a baby. They name him insanical. Okay, so it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You can write a book. You can start a podcast. There are people who've sold their podcast for hundreds of millions of dollars. All they're doing is talking. Oprah Winfrey became a billionaire as a communicator. She just interviewed famous people in front of the famous people's audience and migrated their audience to her. I mean, here's the problem. When we were growing up, in my era, now in the modern day era, the children say this to parents, but in our era, this is what the parents used to say to us. Children are to be seen and not heard. Well, sit somewhere and be still and be quiet, right? Nobody ever taught me, if you get really good at talking, you can set yourself free. Yeah. Nobody ever told me that. Yeah. I had to figure it out. So guess what I did? When I started talking, I wasn't that good at it, but I've been practicing. The highest level of value is imagination. And the resource you use up here is you use your mind and your money to make money. Now, all of us do some of all these, but if you're broke, you're doing mostly these. If you're middle class, you're probably somewhere in here. If you're starting to break through to some wealth, you made your way up here, above the dotted line. Now, I know what you're thinking. And by the way, so up here, on the low end, low, $1 million a year. High end, now we're up to trillions. We got people who are trillionaires. Trillions of dollars. Individuals, trillions of dollars, worth trillions of dollars. Why? Because they come up with ideas. Now, the people who make the most are the people who have good ideas and have the ability to communicate. Here's what's fascinating about Imagineers. I'm going to say a company, you tell me the first person that comes to your mind. You ready? Apple Corporation. Everybody says that. Steve Jobs has been dead for 13 years, and we still say Steve Jobs. You know why? Because he didn't even invent the Apple computer. Steve Wozniak did that. And Steve Wozniak's still living, but nobody ever says Steve Wozniak. People don't say Tim Cook. You know what they say? They say Steve Jobs. Why? Because Steve Jobs was the Imagineer and the communicator who showed the world what Apple could do for them. See, here's the problem. When you're communicating, if all you're communicating to people is what you have, which is basically telling them what they can do for you, they're not interested in hearing from you. I said that too fast, didn't I? See, but when you're communicating with them in a way that shows them that you've obsessed over their problem and finding a solution, guess what they'll do? They will chase you down to pay you. How much will they pay you? Any price you charge. But in order for you to do that, you have to get better at communication. Well, how can I get better at communication? The only way to get better at communication is to bring this down here and add imagination via contemplation. Like you have to become a person who thinks about stuff. Are y'all tracking? Critical thinking. You got to add some critical thinking. What is that? That's asking a lot of questions. Then you have some cognition. What is cognition? Now I have the ability to think about this stuff and figure out a way to put it in words so when it comes out of my mouth, it makes people go, ah. But it requires work. It requires practice. People are, oh, Myron, you're just a natural born communicator. You obviously have no earthly idea. And I know you have no earthly idea how much I have worked on this and how much I do work on this. It's kind of like my good friend Kenny Grant said to me a long time ago. He said, Kenny, man, you are like, when you talk, bro, it's just so good. Every time I hear you preach, it's like, first of all, you look like you're just standing up there eating a really good sandwich. And then you say stuff that just makes your mind explode. How do you do that? And he said, I don't know, man. My mind just run that way. And I thought, he don't want to tell me. That's what I thought. He don't want to tell me. He said, yeah, man, all the people I read after, their mind run that way, and I've been reading after them a long time, my mind just run that way. I didn't know what he meant. I know what he means now. Like, I don't have the ability to think any other way than the way I think, and I don't have the ability to talk any other way than the way I talk, and sometimes it just comes to me while I'm saying it. Yes, why? Because I've got thousands of hours of practice thinking, thousands of hours of practice talking. You know what you do? As soon as it comes to your mind, you blurt it out. But what would happen if you refined it? What if you took some time to take those thoughts and refine them? Like, I don't have my books in here, but when I'm reading books, man, I'm like underlining stuff, I'm highlighting stuff. I got little sticky notes. I'm taking notes on what I'm thinking about as a result of what I'm writing. Like I did a whole video on how I read books. It'll change your life if you start reading books that way. Right? And I'm taking all these notes, and then I'll take the notes and I'll put them in some kind of database categorically so I can go back and I can study them later, and I'll go back and memorize the notes that I took on my own thoughts so that when I'm talking about a thing, right, I'm talking about focus. I mean, well, what's the opposite of focus? See, this is a critical thing. What's the opposite of focus? Oh, the opposite of focus is balance. Oh, people say, you're so out of balance. Oh, okay. Well, balance isn't the objective of life. The 11th commandment is not, thou shalt be balanced, right? Balance is a season of life. It's not the objective of life. There's never winter and summer in the same place at the same time, and you're never in focus and in balance in the same place at the same time. So when you're in focus, you're out of balance. And when you're in balance, you're out of focus. It took me a long time to think of that. And then I say it in a minute, and now it's gone. But when I say it, people go, oh. And see, here's your problem. You have a desire to be balanced, and you haven't earned it yet. You haven't earned the right to be balanced. See, but I didn't just think of that while I was standing up here. I literally sat down with a pen and a paper in my hand and wrote that out a long time ago, then put it in a Google Doc, and then went back and memorized it. Why? Because amateurs wing it, professionals know their lines. If there are principles that I believe, I want to be able to state them in a way where I don't have to keep saying, you know what I mean, you know what I mean, you know what I mean. You say that 3 times, I promise you they don't know what you mean. Now, we take this principle, like what we have to combine these two. We have to combine imagination and communication. Think better thoughts and figure out how to say them in better words. It'll change your life. People will become attracted to you. Here's what they said about Jesus. Never man spake like this man. They said, he speaketh as one having authority, not as the scribes and the Pharisees. See, when you think differently, you'll start talking differently. Okay, so let's combine this. Let's combine this concept. I'm gonna move it over because I don't want to take it off the screen. Let's combine this concept with, I'm gonna do a different color. I'm gonna do green again because it's a good color. So let's combine this concept with this concept. What is this concept? Be, do, have. It's going to happen whether we design it this way or not. So you can either let it happen by default or you can make it happen by design. What is that? Let your communication, what you do, flow out of your character, who you are, and then you can receive your compensation, what you have. See, this is your I am statement. I am a thinker. I do speak. I do use my mouth to make money, or I do use my muscles over time to make money, or I do use my management skills to make money. I do use my mind to make money. See, I do what I do because I am who I am. And I'm only allowed to have what these two give me. And here's the problem people have. They want to have something they've never done the thing to get, and they want to do something they've never become the person who can do it. And here's the interesting thing about it. Where's the I am part happening? It's happening under the ground. You know what's interesting about beneath the ground? It's dark. You know what else is interesting about beneath the ground? It's damp. You know what else is interesting about beneath the ground? It's difficult. When you get up in the air, man, you got no resistance in the air. But when you're under the ground, you got to push through some stuff. And see, the person you're becoming when nobody's watching is what makes you worth looking at when everybody's looking. Makes you worth listening to when you start talking. But if you don't become this joker down here, you can forget all this up in here. That's a wrap. How do you become a better communicator? So I'm going to tell you. Read more books, especially the Bible, and not just the Half Testament. What do you mean the Half Testament? I know you call it the New Testament, but you never read the Old Testament. So it ain't the New Testament. You never read the Old one. For you, it's the half. Was that too tough? If you haven't read the Old Testament, you're not familiar with the Old Testament, you can't even begin to understand the New Testament. You can't. It's just the Half Testament. For you. Read more, but especially the Bible. Read books about things that affect your life. Take notes on your thoughts when you read them. And then go think about what you thought about when you read it. And spend some time doing that. Thinking is the hardest work most people never do. Read more books. Attend more classes, workshops, and seminars. Turn off all of your stupid electronic income reducers and go learn something. What's an electronic income reducer? The TV, the radio, the phone, the computer, the screen. Unless you're using it to learn something, hey, guess what? If there's an area of your life that ain't working, there's something you don't know. And you think you have time to entertain yourself? But Myron, I like amusement. No, you think you like amusement because you don't know what amuse means. The word muse means think. The prefix a means against. Amusement is against thinking. Amusing? You want to entertain yourself and you're broke? My kids were teenagers when we got a television. Why? I wasn't going to watch somebody else living their dreams while we're living a nightmare. Don't you want to see them win? I don't want to see them win. I want to be them win. I want somebody else watching me win. Why does it look like watching somebody win? Like, go team, go. There's my team. They don't know you, boy. They don't know you. You are non-existent in their cognitive awareness of the universe. They are more aware of the mosquito that bit them 5 minutes ago than they are that you exist while you jumping up and down like you lost your mind. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, unless you're broke. And I know I'm talking a little tough for people, but I'm talking from my life experience. This is what I did. See, people want to have what I have, without doing what I've done, and they want to do what I've done without becoming who I've become. And I don't mean becoming Myron. I mean just becoming the kind of person who is willing to go learn the answers that are apparently missing. I was not always a good talker. I learned it. Wasn't always a good communicator. I wasn't always good with money. I learned it. And I'm telling you, you can learn it too, but you have to care to. If you don't have any intention, well then, neglect will take over the day. It's fascinating. Nobody has to intend or try to fail. All they have to do is not intend to succeed. Isn't it interesting that success requires intention and failure only requires neglect? If you're going to be clean, that requires intention. To be dirty, all you got to do is exist. Don't take a bath. All deterioration can happen without any intention at all. This is why we have to become hyper intentional about everything that could make our life better. And stop blaming other people for the reason your life ain't working. So, become a better communicator. I don't like to talk. Well, congratulations, that makes two of us. Now what you gonna do about it? I'm not good at talking. Well, then go get better. You learned how to ride a bicycle, you couldn't do that when you got here either. You learned how to use a computer, you learned how to use a phone, you learned how to drive a Car. And you think God's gonna let you off the hook because you say, I don't know how to do that. I got two words for you. Child, please. Let's go become better communicators. Because when you communicate, then and only then, when you communicate better, then and only then can you elevate. And when you elevate, then you get to participate in the compensate. But don't put the cart before the horse. You know how you can tell if your message is good? Somebody listening to you? Are they taking action on what you said? If they ain't listening, yeah, you talking and you're really impressed with what you said, but you are the only one. Maybe your mama. Let's become better communicators. How can I do it? Here's what I can do. I can become a better vertical communicator. And if I'm not good at communicating, ask God to teach me. God, teach me how to be a better communicator. How good of a communicator is God? So good that when he spoke, worlds came into existence. Isn't it interesting that we're made in the image of God? Like the whole Bible is just showing us how to be more like him. The existential nature of the world exists because God is a communicator. The experiential nature of the world in which we experience life in exists because of how we communicate. You want a better experience of life? Get better at communicating. It's how God set it up. Now, I can try to figure, I know what y'all are wondering, by the way. I forgot to tell you. Where is that 4 levels of value in Genesis chapter 1? Who's wondering that? I don't remember seeing that. Okay. At least 2 of us. Thank you, sister. Okay. When God created everything in Genesis chapter 1, wow. I've been going for a while. When God created everything in Genesis chapter 1, he created 3 categories in creation. He created creation. He said, let there be. Let there be light. Let there be a firmament above the heavens, right? Let there be, when he created creation. He created creatures. He said, let the earth bring forth and let the waters bring forth. Let the earth bring forth the land animals. Let the water bring forth the fish and the fowl. Okay. But when God created man, he didn't say, let there be man. And he didn't say, let the earth bring forth man. That's how I know earth ain't my mama. And he didn't say, let the waters bring forth man. You know what he said? When God made man, and the word man is Adam, which means Adam and Eve, because God called their name Adam. Okay, when I say man, I'm talking about men and women. When God created man, he started talking to himself. He said, let us make man in our image. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over every creeping thing that moves upon the earth. So God said, let us make man in our image. Isn't that fascinating? But when he said, let's make man in our image, that tells us something. You ready? The image existed before he said it. Because if there was no image, he would have had nothing to create man in the image of. So the image existed first. That's the highest level that is, the image of God. That's the highest level. Then God said, that's the communication. But he didn't say, let me make man in my image. What did he say? Let us make man in our image. That's the unification. But he still wasn't done. Genesis chapter 2, what happened? God formed, that's squeezed, man out of the dust of the ground. What happened? God formed man after he made the man. Then he breathed the man that he made into the body that he formed. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. That's the implementation. So when God created the crown of his creation, he used imagination, communication, unification, and implementation. Guess what? When we're going to create the crown of our life, it's going to require imagination. It's going to require communication. It's going to require unification. In what way? We're going to have to become congruent. Our congruency has to begin with becoming congruent with God and his truth. Did I say that too fast? It has to begin with becoming congruent with God and his truth. So when I get myself in alignment with God's truth, now I'm congruent with him. Now I can be congruent with me. But see, here's what often happens. We desire something over here and expect something over here. And guess what that makes us? A double-minded man or woman. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let not that man think he shall receive anything of the Lord. So we need congruency. But if we have all of that, we have all the imagination in the world, all of the communication in the world, the best communication in the world, and all the congruency in the world. If we don't do something and take an action, it doesn't matter. That's how you communicate to elevate. I hope this blesses you. In the meantime, in between time, stay blessed by the best. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. All right. Yes, Trudy, talk to me, sister.